Are you preparing for your first trimester ultrasound and are wondering what exactly your doctor is going to be looking at this visit? Well, you're not alone. This scan is such a big milestone and I'm so excited for you. Well, today I'm going to walk you through everything that we check for in this early ultrasound, from confirming your due date to seeing those early precious heartbeats of your baby. I'm going to share with you everything that we check for, so stay tuned to the end. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Christina Pinnock, and I'm a board-certified OBGYN and high-risk pregnancy doctor, and I'm really passionate about helping you to have a healthy and enjoyable pregnancy. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. This will help me to grow my channel and reach other women who are pregnant just like you. Also, you can get more tips about pregnancy straight to your inbox with my weekly newsletter at healthypregnancyafter30.com, or you can find the link in the description box below. All right, let's dive into exactly what your doctor is looking at during this first ultrasound that you'll have. So before we jump into the details of the ultrasound, let's first talk about the timing of the ultrasound. So your first trimester ultrasound is usually done somewhere between week 6 and week 12 of your pregnancy. The exact timing of when you get this ultrasound is really going to depend on what your doctor recommends, when they recommend confirming your pregnancy, as well as the specifics of your own pregnancy circumstances. So for example, there are some women who have their first ultrasounds at around week 6 to 8, and sometimes this is because they've had perhaps fertility treatments, or maybe they've had previous pregnancy complications, or maybe there's some uncertainty about when their due date would be based on having irregular menstrual cycles. It all varies, but that first ultrasound is usually done somewhere between week 6 and 12 of pregnancy. This ultrasound actually gives us pretty critical information about how your pregnancy is going, and it also helps us to identify any early concerns that can set a good foundation for your prenatal care. So really great to get that early ultrasound, generally done sometimes between week 6 and week 12. Now let's dive into exactly what we're looking for during those early moments of the ultrasound. One of the first things that we look for is we are confirming the pregnancy location, and we're confirming the viability or the health of the pregnancy. So one of the first things that we check for in terms of identifying the location of the pregnancy is we are looking to see where your pregnancy is located. Now, ideally, we want your pregnancy to be located inside of the uterus, but there are some instances when the egg and the sperm combine and the pregnancy actually lands or implants outside of the uterus or in a fallopian tube, which is called an ectopic pregnancy. And that's a pretty serious condition. And so this early ultrasound helps us to identify if that may be happening with you. The way we confirm the location of the pregnancy is by looking for a few things. The first thing that we look for to identify the pregnancy location is for something called the gestational sac. Now, this structure is one of the very first structures that we see, and it usually appears by around weeks 4.5 to week 5 of pregnancy. And essentially, it looks like a small little water balloon or a fluid-filled sac with a bright rim on the outside. Once we see the gestational sac, that's the first step to potentially having a pregnancy in the uterus or an intrauterine pregnancy. Now, once we see the gestational sac, then we look for something within it called a yolk sac. In early pregnancy, before the placenta is fully formed, this small structure called the yolk sac is what's present and what's going to be giving nutrients to your growing baby. And so finding the yolk sac actually helps us to check not only the location, but also the health of the pregnancy. We usually see the yolk sac by around week 5 in pregnancy, and it's really, really crucial that it's there, because once we see it, then we can take a sigh of relief and say, yes, this is a pregnancy that's located in the right place. Seeing a healthy yolk sac on ultrasound is a good sign, as I mentioned, and generally it usually disappears by the end of the first trimester, and then the placenta takes over the job of providing nutrients to your baby once that yolk sac is gone. After we've confirmed the location of your pregnancy, the next thing that we want to confirm is the viability of the pregnancy or the health of the pregnancy. And in order to do that, one of the first things that we look for is for the presence of a heart rate of your baby if we're seeing that early baby there. At around weeks 5.5 to 6 is probably the earliest that we can pick up a heart rate. And on the ultrasound, we can see the heart rate and we can generally measure the heart rate. And so a strong heartbeat at that time is an excellent first sign that things are moving in the right direction. Once we, find the location of the pregnancy, when we're able to detect a heart rate, then we know that things are progressing well. Once the pregnancy is developing a little bit more, then we're able to really understand and measure a few different things. The next thing that we measure is something called the CRL, and this helps to give us an estimation of your due date as well as how far along you are in the pregnancy. We measure the CRL, or the crown rump length, by measuring the distance from the top of your baby's head to their bottom, and we do that 3 times. And once we get those 3 measurements, we take an average of those measurements, we put them in a formula, and then this tells us how far along in the pregnancy you are, and it also helps us to estimate your due date of your pregnancy. Now, accurately figuring out how far along you are in the first trimester using the CRL is really, really important, because it's what's going to help us to determine your due date most accurately. The first trimester is usually the most reliable time to do this. And so even if you're pretty sure about the date of your last menstrual period, we always like to confirm that with that early first trimester ultrasound, or we can adjust your due date if necessary based on this first trimester ultrasound. It's really, really important to get this ultrasound for this reason as well. Another important thing that we check for in this early ultrasound is whether you're carrying one baby or more than one. So this first trimester ultrasound can definitely let us know if you're carrying twins, triplets, or even higher order multiples. We can also see if you are carrying multiples, if the babies are sharing a placenta, or if they have their own placenta, which is really, really valuable information for helping us manage in the pregnancy moving forward. Now, if you are found to be carrying multiples, they have very, very unique needs and some, potential risks. And so it's really important to know this early on in the pregnancy so that you can get the right care and right support that you need throughout the pregnancy. And so that's why it's something that we check for earlier on at this first ultrasound. So in addition to looking at the baby, we also take a close look at your organs as well. And so we take a look at things like your uterus and ovaries to see if there are any things that are concerning that we need to keep an eye on. The ultrasound can show us if there are any structural issues like fibroids, which are essentially benign growths within the uterus, and they're fairly common and they don't always cause problems in pregnancy, but knowing that they're there can help us to monitor them as your pregnancy continues. We also look at the ovaries for any cysts or any abnormalities that we see near your ovaries. Generally, ovarian cysts are really, really common. They're usually very harmless. If we do see one, we generally keep an eye on it to ensure that it doesn't grow too large and that there's nothing that we need to keep a closer eye on. Now, the next thing that I'll share that we take a look at on this early ultrasound are different developmental stages of your baby. So as I mentioned early on, like at around week 6, we'll take a look to measure your baby to see the crown rump length of the baby as well as the size of baby to ensure that baby's growing well. And then later on, by around week 7 to 8, we should start seeing little tiny limb buds, or the areas where the arms and legs will be growing. And then we also look at the general structure of your baby to ensure baby is growing well, like the body, the head, and other parts of baby. And so this early ultrasound helps us to see these things. And seeing these developments helps to reassure us that the pregnancy is progressing as expected, and each milestone gives us more insight into how your baby is developing so that we can guide you on what to anticipate with the next stages of your pregnancy. There is also another specialized first trimester ultrasound that I did want to briefly mention, and that ultrasound is called the Nuchal translucency screening, or NT ultrasound. Now, this ultrasound is specifically done between weeks 11 and 14 of pregnancy, and essentially this ultrasound just looks in more detail at your baby, at their early organs, and it looks at a specific area at the back of the baby's neck called the nuchal area, which can be enlarged in certain genetic conditions. And so the nuchal thickness or the neck thickness can let us know if your pregnancy could potentially be at risk for genetic conditions. And so it's another option for evaluation that is available that I did want to mention. Now, what can you expect during your actual ultrasound appointment? Well, it depends on how early you go in for your ultrasound, but in the early weeks of pregnancy, we often do a transvaginal ultrasound or an internal ultrasound, where a small ultrasound probe is essentially inserted into the vagina to help us get a clearer picture of how your pregnancy is developing. The ultrasound may feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it's generally not painful, but it usually gives us the best images and the best pictures of your baby in those early weeks. As you progress further along in your first trimester, now essentially later on, we should be able to do an abdominal ultrasound where we can see your pregnancy by scanning your belly instead. Either way, you'll get to see the screen and watch along as your doctor goes through the different parts of your baby and show you that first excited moment where you're seeing your baby's heart rate. And so generally, I'd say that's what to expect at the actual ultrasound visit. Once your ultrasound is done, your doctor will likely review the results with you there. And if everything looks normal, then that's wonderful news, and you'll continue with your regular prenatal appointments after that. If there are any concerns with the ultrasound, generally they're discussed right away, and any support and next steps will be reviewed with you. But generally, most first trimester ultrasounds go smoothly, and they're just there to provide you some reassurance that everything with the pregnancy is progressing well. If there's anything unusual with that early ultrasound, then you generally work closely with your OB doctor to get the best possible care and support around whatever is not going as expected. Now, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this video has helped you understand what we're looking at during this first trimester ultrasound and why each part of the scan is so important. So if you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new videos, and so you can help me to grow my channel and reach other women just like you. Also, if you have any questions or topics that you want to see me cover, feel free to drop them in a comment down below. And as always, I'm here to help you feel more informed and supported during your pregnancy. If you're finding these videos helpful and you want some extra tips straight to your inbox, don't forget to check out my newsletter at healthypregnancyafter30.com, where you can get more information about pregnancy straight to your inbox. All right, take care, and I'll see you on the next one.